Daily recap here for our trades on this Thursday, the 30th of December, 2021. We have one more day left in this month, in this year of trading for 2021. Exciting year so far. Just the growth and opportunity that has come at us here has been exciting. We're definitely going to get a hard recap going for the December month and maybe bleed into the little bit of the 2021 recap as well here over the weekend. But excited to see what 2022 also has to bring in that as well. For me on the day, a little bit of chopping around, just kind of expanding on some pattern plans that have been going off of lately. SOPA, FTFT, and PTPI were my traders on the day. Lots of OTC tickers being talked about in the chat, AXXA and AABB. I could see a little bit of AXXA. I'll mention that just here quick before we get into the actual trades and actual tickers. On the daily, this one's looking pretty nice. You could see an obvious little breakout here. And of course, that 10-cent level area is a looming emotional, psychological level there. So Mark Crook was definitely very, very... not bag holder is the word I want to use, but convicted in this trade. As I could attest to him and give him that for the reason that volume was coming in, price was looking nice, holding higher lows here, coming back above VWAP, but just didn't really have the legs in it today. Interesting to see there on that one in AABB. Still looking for the first screen day. It'll be interesting to see if I could type it. Oh, jeez. Too many letters. I would be interesting to see if Matt Monaco is trading this one today in the small cap recap, if he comes out with it today. But I know a few other people were still looking for the bounce off of this one from that hard sell-off day on the 28th on Tuesday. So that was a little bit of introduction back on SPY. Yeah, we're tapping all-time highs again, and then, of course, coming into the close here, just selling off pretty hard. It's not like massive panic. We're still above 476, 475 here. We'll see if what tomorrow brings or what pre-market going into tomorrow has in store for us, but it seems to go through this trend quite a few times where, especially in the start of that month of November, we just get these little breakout all-time high attempts and then sell-offs, breakout all-time high attempts, double top and triple top and quad top and sell-off again. Just kind of par for the course in my view of what the market's been doing lately. I mean, we're hitting all-time highs pretty much every 3 days, so it's not like any real worry for concern at this point. My Roth IRA is still loving these price moves every single day. Market volume on the day, NASDAQ, we are hour and a half after the close here. NASDAQ, $162 billion volume. Nice to see $202 billion volume. Good to see that above $200 billion. And OTC's $1.7 billion volume on the day. So like I mentioned, 3 traders on me for the day. PTPI was paper, and I'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, let's get right into it. SOPA, I'll mention first. This low float Asian e-commerce boy that's just been this multi-day little holder and kind of, scrappy little price action. I call it scalpy, but still after that first screen day, these past, really the thesis for this long trade today was based on, it's been holding pretty decently, not like amazing A+, insanely well for me as a breakout style of trade on a multi-day setup or like a drawn out third day surge type of play that is just continuing to hold and hold and hold, consolidate out and draw itself out that it's eventually spikes up. But the possibilities are still there. We've still got an obvious low here around 12.5 as a mark. And that was really the line I was looking for with my first kind of just blanket broad entry in pre-market when it really wasn't looking strong on a level 2 or time and sales basis, but just as the thesis coming into this chart today of, hey, I think there's potential there. I want to start in with 10 shares. We'll give it a $100 size, $140 size, just to get started, just to get the feet wet and protect a little bit of that FOMO maybe if it does start to spike against us, or if it does start to spike to the upside before we even get a chance to get in this one. But sure enough, as I'll get into a little bit on the actual trade itself, it did have a nice little kind of dip and rip, you can call it, that sell off below VWAP here out of the gate, and then recourse back above VWAP there for the little trade. But this was, this trade was really based on these last 7 trading days, these past 7 trading days. You could really categorize it as the 6 of these 7 trading days have produced some amount of price movement higher in the morning session out of these 6 out of the last 7 days. You could call it this day, a little bit of this day here. We're on a 30-minute candle wise. You can call that a little bit of price movement upward this day, especially this day. The whole day was pretty much a green day there. And really this Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, Tuesday was the only really sell-off day out of the gates after that first green day that it had, that it did have a little bit of a sell-off out of the morning bell after that first green day. But Yeah, after I traded this one Tuesday as well, pretty much on the same type of thesis. Again, I mentioned this a lot, but it is a lot to ask for lightning to strike twice for the awesome opportunity that was traded on that Tuesday for that day that I capitalized on pretty well, but certainly had a lot more room profit-wise left in the tank to be traded on that one. So looking for kind of the same thing with this trade, and it was pretty speculative, and that's why I did keep my size on this one fairly small. This was a real cash account trade. I'm slowly starting to step back into that role. And with what trades I do feel convicted hard on, especially to the short side, which I've been tracking pretty hard on, just chart-wise, data-wise. We'll mention that or get into that on FTFT for what we were seeing there. But yeah, for these ones that are just kind of a speculative of, God, it's a low floater. We're getting close to the end of the week, end of the year. Even though there's not a lot of dollar volume traded, sometimes that's kind of the best opportunity to get in these ones because these things can run with just without really any warning or volume to suggest that why they should be doing these crazy things. Charts and price action can kind of sneak through the cracks of where they end up going at times that way. So this getting into the actual trade itself, as I blanketed it a little bit just in pre-market there, just to be in it thinking, hey, I think the thesis is there potentially on this one. It's looking decent as of right now. We'll look for any signs of entry. I was well enough to give it all the way pretty much down to that 12.5 mark to say, I'll give you enough of this room. If you're selling off here, I'm pretty far away as an entry price, but I certainly don't think that $15 is out of the question. If it does start to sell off closer to the $13 mark or anywhere around that range, that it could reclaim that price at some point. But of course, keeping my size matched to what should be an appropriate little risk profile at that point. But as we developed a little, call it dip and rip out of the gates, started sizing and looking for that intraday push that, hey, maybe this move could actually happen today. We get a little bit of curl, nice little volume coming in to push this thing higher back above VWAP and start that little bit of parabolic move that we were getting there. And I mean, if you're perfect on this little move, you get like 6-7% out of that move. So idea grade for me on this trade, just of what the chart was showing in the morning session, I give it a C. It's not awesome, it's not spectacular, but it was certainly there. And execution-wise, for what I was doing on the sell, I can get into the breakdown of kind of the two different areas that I saw as a cut point or risk point as the trade was confirmed that there was actually some opportunity there. I can give myself a B today for how I was handling it, but where do I want to go with that? Okay, so as we get into this trade confirmation phase, that okay, now we're to the upside of VWAP here. Now we're testing these points. This is what I was going to get into, of the reflection that I can put back on it now today. That why wasn't I taking off any shares at 14.5? That's certainly what I did on that Tuesday. I was just taking off shares at those whole dollar levels of 14 and 14.5, 14.2, taking profit, the safe money, taking the money when I can, not when I have to, using that Tom Sosnoff quote. Kind of as a religion. That's one of my rules. And really, the trade idea for me didn't see myself taking any profits on this one until at least a minimum of $15. I just thought it was going to be very cowardice almost for me to take anything off before that. But looking back on it, I can obviously recognize and say to myself, in a lot of these trades today too, FTFT, the same thing that we'll get into, that, they were getting pretty exhaustive volume for what it's been showing in pre-market in the first 4 or 5 minutes of market hours until we get to this 9:35 minute candle here that comes with a huge surge of 150,000 shares of volume that was just minuscule compared to everything it's been doing these past 7 days it's been in this run-up. And yeah, the total daily volume today too, just minuscule and butt whoopie-ish is the phrase I want to use it. For these past trading days. So just really wasn't in the works today. And then like I'm mentioning the volume really isn't there, but price action is looking decently. So if the volume was going to start to come after this push to the upside of VWAP, we get in this little tiny wedge here. If we started pressing higher or adjusting the risk level from what would have been low of day from my entry point here of this little actual dip and rip style of trade, changing the risk from a low of day profile to then now we can still maintain that low of day risk. That's one avenue and give it plenty of room to work that way. It's when it's been working, not pushing as hard a percentage moves that way. That's sometimes what you have to do at times. And I think the only opportunity that I would have seen myself getting out at a decent or different profit than what I was taking today, the little minuscule profit I did take on this one, kind of a scalpy trade, would be giving this thing till low of day or just right around entry price, where I could see a little bit, get myself a little bit faked out here and kind of bottom taking it. But if I was still risking that low of day, maintaining a 13.7 risk point and seeing this thing pull all the way back, if I was going on that risk profile, then I would certainly have to be pressing hard on, gosh, okay, now we're back above VWAP here. I could have seen myself getting a little bit of faked out or sketchy in this candle after we're back to the upside of VWAP reclaims, and now it's trying again, but it's getting pretty top wicky. We got 3 in these 4 little minute span here that is just very top heavy, and just, again, not a lot of volume coming in off of what was a pretty decent little morning push there on some decent volume that came in, but just wasn't going to happen. So I could have seen myself maybe saving a few cents from what I did going off of the other strategy, which I ended up going with on this one, of risking that little wedge bottom or VWAP, which ended up being kind of another key price target area that I think a lot of other, if there were other longs coming in on the same thesis for this trade today, that they were risking that same type of thing, that I ended up getting cut there around that price failure movement for that trade. So 2 different ideas that I was looking at potentially attack this trade today for how it couldn't have worked, but yeah, just really no volume there to push it today to get any squeeziness to get lightning to strike twice like it did on that Tuesday. For a nice trade there. Had a little bit of sell-off, but it's certainly not dead. I mean, it had a little bit of sell-off today, down 5%. We're showing here from the close of yesterday, but that 12.5 level is still kind of intact. So we could consolidate a little bit more. We could go pretty heavy tomorrow coming into, Friday, Money Friday. So keep it on the watch, but yeah, I think it would have to develop a little bit more of a pattern. And I think for the potential that is there on this trade, you can get a little bit lenient on allowing it to produce that actual trade confirmation, because there's huge upside potential if that confirmation is actually there. So we went over the grades, went over executions. Yeah, that was pretty much it on SOPA FTFT. We'll get into now. If I tap it in the little box there, gosh, so FTFT, call it a 4th day play, call it a first green day play, just as a reference for me. 50 million floater. News catalyst today was they had new blockchain division for their company. Whoopee, yeah, whatever. Got a few warrants out from 2017 to 2020. They got a July shelf of this year of $200 million, still pending effect. But what company doesn't have that? It was just nothing atrocious that I was just so dismayed by. And really, as I look back on all of these shorts, I like to see that fundamental and potential dilution overhead. But really, I do not base any of these short trades off of that, because there's no tracker, there's no analysis, there's no webcam to see into the actual people, the actual overhead, the physical people there, to see if they're pushing buttons. It's great and all to understand there's a huge shelf on this one. They got all these S3s and things going blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't really matter if no buttons are being pushed, and there's really no way to tell until it's in the exact moment, and kind of until it's too late, and recognizing the trade intra-trade. But was able to get a screen cap of the level 2 and time sales today to read into a little bit of that movement today as a learning lesson. So I'll link to that just for me as reference as well. But yeah, this was a trade based, a lot of little emotions going into this one today, but mainly this trade was based off of CANF from yesterday. That kind of followed a similar parameter of CANF was a little bit longer, not so much a 4th day play, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, call it a 6th or 7th day play off of a first screen day that really didn't do anything. Had a hard sell off on that second day, and then just kind of fizzled, went sideways the following days after that. Then had a news catalyst of a decent, not as much as the same percentage move of the first screen day, but produced a little bit of volume, a little bit of interest back in the stock, but eventually that entry point of failure to maintain VWAP after that initial spike really was the coup de grace. I think that's the right term to use there, of getting a short entry there, basing your price off of using risk of high of day as a point there of letting it play out how it wants to play out. Just set your price target and just let it fade and die as it wants to do. So I'm using that same kind of model on FTFT today. A little bit different. Of course, they're different. CANF is a little bit lower float. Of course, they're different sector of stocks themselves, and if CANF was a little bit further out than what FTFT was in different. FTFT was a intraday first green day move and had a little bit of harder sell-off before the close on that first green day, but nonetheless of kind of using those same models, and that's what I'm trying to do as an overall market sentiment of what do these similar types of patterns want to do on these days, and using that as a reference point. So I was lucky enough to be able to not get in short, which would have been the first little failure to maintain VWAP at that point of a sharp VWAP. You can see here on the actual VWAP itself, that sharp V as it goes from the spike to trend reversal going back down, not getting a short entry there, just allowing it to just do whatever it wants to do. It does actually produce a new high of day from there and start to sell off. And it's at that point that still going through other scans and doing other things and then pulling the chart up again, saying, okay, we're at that little critical point, and now it's failing VWAP here. We're at this little stutter step point of, okay, should we get an entry price in? Just for funsies, not really going hard in it, but looking at borrow fees through Trade Zero, going through the motions that way of, okay, well, it's I know I would want to be taking $1,000 or 1,000 share position size, $1,500. Okay, geez, it's going to be $44 for borrow fees on a 50 million floater. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe we'll just go paper trade at this point. Then another voice in my head going, gosh, no, you put the data in on this one. I think it'd be silly to stay paper on this trade. We got to start getting back into that role and function of going back into these real trades. We've established the emotional presence that we need to have with these trades, and I definitely want to maintain the idea of, if it starts going against you, if it starts doing something different than what you initially thought was going to happen, cut it, move on to the next one. Do not be so kissing the feet of what these day trades are, and I don't want to waste a day trade, so I'm not going to cut it here. I'm going to wait till the risk level is high of day before I cut it and just let it go. And how many times I've gotten stupidly faked out, stopped out as it just barely ticks above high of day. That's everybody in their grandma's risk level, and then it pulls back perfectly nice. Getting out of that mindset, not only to stop getting faked out top ticks like that, but also to clean the palette and understand, okay, what I thought was going to happen is not happening. This is a different chart than when I pulled it up for the first time than when I got in the trade. So I need to readjust. I need to get out and just take a step back and understand what's going on here. Let's reevaluate with that clean perspective of not, because like as many of you know, and even myself watching this back, it is hard at times to, as you're still holding a trade, to have a clean perspective to say, what is this trade going to do here? Because it's very easy to fall into the bias of still holding the same perspective that you had from when you entered that trade versus now as the chart's developing. And as you can see here where I got my first cut, almost pretty much top ticking there, that, okay, am I seeing the right things? It's not really following what I thought it was going to do, similar to CANF, kind of modeling off of that. I was really anticipating for this thing to just die. I did not want to see any amount of strength or volume coming into this one, especially back above VWAP. But that's a mentality that I maintained, and I can't knock myself for that. And looking back in hindsight on the review of this trade, that, okay, we did perk above VWAP. It did start to fall off a little bit after my entry there from the downside of VWAP, but it did start to reclaim. And, I can give it that little bit of leash and leniency as it's still, for this little time span here, in pre of, okay, it's not dying off yet. You go do what you want to do. You're not going doing anything crazy at this point, but I need you to be dying. This is the time frame for these types of trades that it's not about, especially shorting. It's not about, let's just wait and see if it works. At times, it's shorting especially is all about that timing factor. So just allowing it to do that little wait out, then it gets a perk above VWAP, and we're getting a little testy, a little spiky here with little volume perks it's coming in. So I'm maintaining that same discipline in my head to say, my normal risk level would be that 1.7 level, 1.73 high of day area. But gosh, for where it's moving right now, this is it's a little too weird, and it's a little bit more different than what I was initially planning, trying to predict the future at the entry of this trade. So I'll cut it. I thought some volume was coming in there at the 165 area. So I said, okay, shoot, I'll go ahead and cut it. And sure enough, volume then redirected the chart and just spanked this thing down with huge volume down to 158. It didn't tank the thing, which was interesting, but it just, I know that's going to happen so many more times in the future in my trading career, but just Another one of those freaking times that, okay, well, I read that wrong. I got top ticked again for the cover there. But that was the beauty of me not holding, going into this second entry then, that's the beauty of me not holding myself to what I did for a long, long time on that, with this PDT account, with the margin account that, oh, shoot, well, okay, I used up a day trade. They got me. I took a loss. Yeah, they got me. Then I would go ahead and like sit for the rest of the day, and I'd watch the screens at times, but I wouldn't take any trades because then I would think it would be revenge trading. And somehow that I'd just like, oh, I would take a stupid trade there. I already wasted a day trade today. I don't want to get back in again. No, that is not what I've been building these past few weeks here of understanding. That's what the market's meant to do. It's meant to stop you out and get you out with these stupid little attempts like this one. But that doesn't mean the chart is just over. That doesn't mean like everybody's closed up shop and saying, yeah, sweet, we got him. We got that guy. We got the little kid over there. Now we can just finish up and go home. The chart still has to play out for the rest of the day. And if the opportunity is still there and you can recognize that, then there's still opportunity to strike. So as we're bouncing again on that 1.6 area and we're falling below that, we're breaking through those little bidder prices. I'm saying I got another day trade left in this account. I know I got another PDT margin account as well too that I could have also tapped into. But the mentality there of, okay, let's get back in. I think the potential for this trade is still there. We're getting the same entry price of 158. I think it's still the same trade as what I would have been in if I didn't get this little stupid cover here. Let's get back in, give it a ride. And sure enough, it does have a nice little sell-off of this. The price move today was a little bit slower than what I feel is best suited for my personality. I want to see this thing just like completely tank and just go to plus 10% profit immediately after my entry, right? That's my type of mentality. That's what the trades I look for. I just want it to happen immediately. That's what feels most comfortable, right? Of just, you're always green in the positive and then it just goes right to your price target. That's not always going to happen, but we're going to, FTFT, just for the price movement in general of itself, it was a little bit slower, kind of blockier, I call it, of chart printing, that it's hitting hard levels of 152. And okay, now we're hitting hard at 152, 152. It a little blocky that way. It's just kind of a feel thing almost. But anyway, it does get a little hard sell-off, a little bit of a nice sell-off into market open. Does not have any hard bid support trying to come and push it back to VWAP within the first few minutes. Still maintaining or watching that 945 area if it does have any harder push or VWAP reclaim around that time frame in the first 15 minutes there. And it does start to have a little flirtation again at that 1.5 $half level area. Was finger on the trigger, almost ready to start cutting with, I think, a little bit of the mentality of getting cut short or getting a little bit screwed out on that first trade. Was bleeding in a little bit there at 1.5, but the whole time, I think I had an order in at 1.4 to cover 750 shares at 1.4, even before market open, because that's just for whatever reason, that was my price target. That's where I thought the end of this trade would have been as a minimum. I thought we were going to end closer to 135, 1.3, maybe for the sentiment that CANF said for, I can't say the overall market because we're tapping all-time highs again today, but just for the sentiment of where these little first screen day movers were, that just death and kind of bleeding is upon these trades. So a takeaway, as I can get in these two exits here, we get to this little 142 bottom. It's just holding and holding and holding, and I'm saying, you are not going to do this. Don't base here. You're supposed to die and bleed off. And forced to cover, like forced my hand to cover at least, I think I took off 100 shares at that point to at least take something off, because it would be absolutely ridiculous for me if not to take something off there 2 cents away from my profit target if this thing started to reverse and then kind of do pretty much perfectly what it did today. And then as we, it does its little fake out attempt, and I'm still giving it the life of, okay, I'm giving you the leash, or I'm giving you a little bit more leash, like let you do what you want to do. You're not passing 1.5 yet, but you need to die off pretty soon here. And thought we were going to get some attempts, but still bottoming again, and just eventually more volume does come in and starts pushing higher prices. So kind of forces me to cover around 146-ish, 147-ish that I got there for the final cover. I think that's the right exit price. Yeah. And that was pretty much the end of the trade, the end of the morning downtrend sentiment for that one. But a takeaway I guess I could learn from this one today, and I think it's going to be a mixed bag as I'm reflecting on it, of talking about this little price, this little area here, not there. The right where my first cover was. So right here at this point of, okay, as we're bottoming at 142, my price target is 1.4. Just an arbitrary picked price of that's a, a kind of half a key psychological level of 1.4, not 1.41, not 1.42. I could have picked 1.41. That was going through my mind as well too. Okay, maybe we get a little screwy fake out attempty here. It doesn't go perfectly to 1.4, but we maybe get 1.41, but whatever. For whatever reason, I picked that price, and I just kind of come so stubborn to that idea. And maybe that was a little bit because of I had the thoughts definitely in my head after this first trade of, oh, okay, gosh, I'm down. Of course, the P&L has to appear somewhere. Okay, I'm down $70 on that, and down another $44 with the borrow fees. I would have to get another $120 to dig myself out of that hole. And then it just kind of downward spirals from there. But immediately after those thoughts are happening, I am telling myself, the smarter voice in my head is saying, we are not thinking that way whatsoever. We are not trading P&L. We are not going off of any type of thesis like that whatsoever, especially as we're intra-trade of, oh, okay, well, each cent here, I'm losing another, $10, and just kind of the stupidity that can wreck my brain, especially that way, of trying to trade based on the P&L. We are not doing that whatsoever. So I was looking for every reason to shut that down with each move. And I think the way I was able to trade today was able to get ourselves out of that hole. I mean, we're ending the day down $7 with the help of SOPA, the $4 we got out of that one. But turning what would have been a $120 loss on this one into, down $11. After that nice little 6-7% win that we were able to pull out of it, getting in the actual trade that we were looking for on this one the whole time. But back to this point of, okay, now my price target is 1.4, arbitrary point. I think it's going to be such a half and half line of charts that I get into the future of this, that there's going to be times and charts where I would be such a coward, or to pull up the chart at the end of the day and think, oh, why did you cut yourself short at 142 when this thing closed the day at 1.3? And there's going to be other charts where, covering at 1.42, as you can see, an obvious bottom being put in there. That was like, oh man, I'm so glad we covered at 1.42. We covered a majority of the position at that price, because that was really the only opportunity we had. I think as time goes on, there's going to be a mixed bag and a handful of both of those scenarios that it just becomes a feel thing, and you're never going to be able to nail them perfectly. And even in this one specifically, intra-trade of watching it, it was just like, it was on the verge, teeter-tottering of whatever way it was going to go. And it wasn't until bigger volumes started to come in on the bid side that said, okay, well, I got to cover something at this point. If it's not going to die there, it would be reckless of me for me to not at least take something off at this point. I think that is all I wanted to mention. I think I mentioned trade idea grade. I could give myself a B for the trade idea grade. That from pre-market, the trade idea was there, and just execution-wise, I give myself a C. There's much more room for improvement, but we did, for the opportunity that was there and the chart that was in front of us, and the intra chart especially, which we have to factor in. There's many things to learn from, but I think we did a lot of things right of getting back in the trade when the trade opportunity was still there, and covering when we needed to cover, and not trying to force more out of the chart than was really there to begin with on that trade. I think that was all that I want to mention on that one. Then mention lastly here, PTPI. This is that one from yesterday that I've been short paper still no shares available to short through trade zero at this point in time. So still short 200 shares from yesterday coming into today. So kind of cutting my risk profile in half for what I was initially short in that little sell-off from the morning dump yesterday. Keeping my limit cover order at 3.4, just looking for that as a minimum of, I was looking to cover 100 shares of my 200 shares left on the position at 3.4. That's somehow randomly became a nice little bounce area today, because we did break that bottom wedge little area. I've mentioned this one how many times before that. Gosh, I think there's draw the line again. How many times we've drawn this line. It's continuing to build on this little wedge bottom that I think if we break that line, I think there's a lot of bag holders playing off of that. But again, I mentioned in the past on this ticker as well that I could also definitely see a little fake out coming from that we get the break below that line and then somehow reclaims off of there. And that's kind of what it did today. And a little arbitrary secondary stop level at 3.6 that as I was stepping away from the computer doing other stuff today, it did fill me on the rest of those, my last 100 shares on the position. So again, locking in profits with right around those other 3 trades yesterday, right? That's 3.6 mark to get me out of the trade for 7.5% profit on that trade. Yeah, interesting one. And I think it was a lot to ask, a pretty lofty ask to think that we would just see a beautiful and nice hard sell-off for how many multiple days this entire move has been stretched over, going back, I mean, really to the start of November, that we can consider this entire move something to consider as one conglomerate chart pattern. But gosh, yeah, we'll definitely have to keep it on watch for the next few days here. I mean, it could definitely keep stagnant for the next few days. I don't think it's that tomorrow, if we break that line again, that it would have the sentiment that, oh, we are definitely going to die off if it breaks that line again. It could kind of double bottom, fake out under that line again, and it could just slowly start to trickle down on that line. This little arbitrary line may have had no amount of influence or hard bias on it whatsoever, but just something kind of random that we picked and saw as a swing trade style of look that way. But yeah, just interesting charts to learn from. And from the market opportunities that were there today on the, it's not little dollar volume that is there, but of course, compared to what we've been trading in past few months before this end of the year here, yeah, we'll take what we can get and continue to learn from them as best as we can. That is really all I wanted to mention. Still making a long video out of these little charts that we had today. Nothing really hard for me on the scans that I'm so convicted or passionate about right now. That is all that I had. I sincerely thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.